What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. We hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are having a very happy, safe, healthy, and Merry Christmas weekend. However you're celebrating it, know that we are thinking of you at Blogging the Boys and very grateful for you being a part of our Dallas Cowboys family, a family that right now is rather pissed off. This is our post-game show here at Blogging the Boys. You can watch us live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, the Blogging the Boys Twitch channel, or the Blogging the Boys Facebook page. You can also catch the rewatch on those places at your own convenience, which kind of matters this time of year when you're either busy right now or traveling or whatever the case may be. Know that you can always catch this whenever you are available. You can also listen to this on our podcast network if that is more your thing. Subscribe, please, to our podcast network wherever you get your podcasts, also to our YouTube channel, Twitch channel, and like us on Facebook. Also, please make sure to visit bloggingtheboys.com for the latest and greatest in the world of the Cowboys. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa, or on TikTok at RJ.Ochoa. It is Christmas Eve. It's about 7 p.m. Central Standard Time as we get started. Rick Ursulini says, "Hi, RJ. Merry Christmas Eve." Again, I like kind of being positive to start. Watsamata says, "Howdy, RJ. Merry Christmas, friend." Skylar says, "Merry Christmas, BTB family." That's the right spirit to have here. Now, look, it's been about 20 or so minutes in real time for me and for you, I think, since the Cowboys officially lost to the Miami Dolphins, 22-20, the final score. And I think what was particularly painful and frustrating about the end of the game was it kind of felt like the Cowboys were going to lose this game for most of the second half. And then, the way sports work, we were teased the Dak Prescott to Brandon Cooks touchdown. We thought maybe we're just going to come away with this. Maybe they're going to steal one. Maybe it's going to happen. It was a little bit ugly, but you know what? A win is a win is a win is a win. And ultimately we'll be 11-4 and all will be good. We don't really have to kind of fight about this over the course of the next couple of weeks, but that did not happen. Obviously the Cowboys defense, after I think playing really well, just couldn't hold on. Tyreek Hill on a critical third down caught a slipping Jordan Lewis and was able to move the chains, and the Dolphins got into easy field goal territory and kicked 5 field goals on the day. And that to me is kind of the story. I tweeted this actually after the 4th field goal. Look, I know the Dolphins dealt with injuries. Obviously, Tyreek has not been at 100%, and Jalen Waddle was injured, and I wouldn't say ruled out of this game, but obviously didn't return to this game at one point. Raheem Mostert obviously was dealing with injuries. It was not the best offensive day from the Miami Dolphins. And some of that, obviously, I think is credited or should be credited to the play of the Cowboys defense, a Cowboys defense that I personally have been very hard on as of late. I've been very hard on Dan Quinn. And while I hesitate to say that they were awesome or they were amazing, they more than did their fair share of duty on Sunday afternoon in Miami. They more than put the Cowboys offense in positions to put this thing away. Again, the Dolphins scored 6 times and only one of them was a touchdown. I think that you have to kind of pat the Cowboys defense on the back for that effort, and you have to really hold the offense's feet to the fire. I mean, that touchdown at the very end was just the second Cowboys touchdown of the game. Now, you can talk about the Hunter Lipke, obviously, fumble if you want to put it on Hunter or Dak Prescott, depending on how your fantasy league tracks and calculates those things. I hope you were on the right side of it, but you got to be better than that. And we talked about that last week, obviously, against the Buffalo Bills. And I think what is disconcerting right now, if you're a Cowboys fan, is we chalked the Bills loss up a little bit in our kind of coping out in the aftermath of it all. We chalked that up to, well, the Bills are a more desperate team and the Bills are a hungrier team. And I think if you watched the Bills-Chargers game on Saturday night, maybe you were just a little bit concerned with how the Chargers made things a lot closer than the Cowboys did. But it's the NFL. It's a week-to-week proposition. And so you can't put a whole hell of a lot of stock, and we will get to my stock report, obviously, in things like that. Now, the Dolphins obviously were able to clinch a playoff berth with a win, which they ultimately did. Kudos and congratulations to them. But they were not in the position of desperation or the position of hunger as the Bills. And they were not as elite of a team, I don't think, all due respect to the Dolphins, as the Bills. They were not kind of the wolf in sheep's clothing from a record standpoint, the way the Bills were. It was fair. And I think this, last week as the evaluation of week 15 happened, that was kind of fair to understand. So we were willing to say, you know what, Cowboys, you kind of caught a Bills team that maybe doesn't have the most impressive record in the NFL, but is much better than that. It's difficult to give the Cowboys any kind of benefit or any kind of excuse or any kind of whatever. And I think what's particularly frustrating to me is, and we use the word narrative a lot, but I don't think anybody cares specifically about the narrative, but the narrative about this team is they can't win on the road. They can't beat good teams, right? And that was why a lot of people called this the fraud bowl, because Dallas and Miami both kind of in similar situations from that perspective across the holes of their season. And the Cowboys had every bit of control in front of them with regards to putting this narrative to bed. And we've talked, and I've talked about how they did put the narrative to bed about beating teams above 500. They beat the Seahawks, and that kind of quieted things. They beat the Eagles, and then all the chatter about winning against teams with an above 500 record went away. But then obviously the chatter became about beating teams on the road, more specifically beating successful, beating good, beating legitimate, beating playoff teams on the road began to surface. And since the Cowboys have been challenged by the narrative world, by the football world, by the football collective, they have failed. They have failed in back-to-back weeks. They have lost back-to-back games for the first time in over 2 years. And what is concerning about this, and there's nothing that can happen, and I don't mean to say that in kind of a masochistic or Eeyore sort of way, but what's particularly upsetting is there will not be another opportunity to answer this call, to prove this to ourselves, to have the Cowboys prove it to themselves. I thought Kevin Burkhardt had a great comment in the drive that Dak Prescott and the Cowboys were putting together where they would ultimately take the lead that they obviously wouldn't hold on to. But Kevin Burkhardt talked about how this was a big game, and we'll get to the implications of it from a playoff standing and a divisional standing and kind of sense in a moment. But Kevin Burkhardt said this was a big game for the Cowboys psyche, and I agree with that. And depending on how much stock you put into that as far as sports are concerned, I do think that this had to be a big moment for the Cowboys to say, we can go on the road. We can do so against legitimate teams, against playoff teams, and we can come away with wins. And what's concerning is the next game on the road for the Cowboys, in all likelihood, won't mean anything. That Week 18 game on the road against the Commanders, it's very, very, very possible. Some would argue more likely than not that it is going to be insignificant for Dallas, that they're probably going to be locked into that 5 seed. So the next opportunity that Dallas has to go on the road to win a playoff game or to win a game in general is going to be in the playoffs. And it's probably going to be against the NFC South winner. And while the Buccaneers are on all sorts of fire as of late, which is concerning in a general sense, if the Cowboys are going to have to play them in the first round, people will still, if the Cowboys beat them for the second year in a row, say it's just the Bucs. It's not even a good team. It's just the crummy NFC South winner. So the next opportunity to prove it is going to be with everything on the line. That is kind of my opening thoughts, my opening sort of statement, if you will. Again, it's frustrating because it was all right there to kind of take control and put themselves in a driver's seat and put pressure on Philadelphia. Now, for what it's worth, the Dallas Cowboys can still win the NFC East. I know that nobody wants to hear that. I know that everybody wants to be mad at the team right now, but the formula required, the Cowboys now have to win out. They had a situation coming into this week where they only needed to win one game between Miami and Detroit. The Lions did clinch the NFC North on Sunday. Congratulations to them. We will see them obviously 6 days from now when Jimmy Johnson goes into the Ring of Honor. But if Dallas beats Detroit and if they win that insignificant game, so to speak, on the road against the Commanders in Week 18, and if the Eagles lose any game, you get those 3 things. It is now those 3 exact things that you need: 2 Cowboys wins and 1 Eagles loss, and the Cowboys are NFC East champions. But it's kind of difficult to see how that would happen in general right now, what with the Eagles' friendly schedule, obviously. And what's more is now Detroit is ahead of the Cowboys. Now, if the Cowboys beat them, obviously that knocks them down a peg and gives Dallas the head-to-head tiebreaker. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating because everything was in front of the Cowboys, and they really let it go. They let everything go, which is tough scene. Let's get to our super chats. Very appreciative of those of you who came in early and obviously super chat. Brian, everybody follow Brian on TikTok at Talk Cowboys. Says, Merry Christmas, Cowboys Nation. We'll catch us on the replay. Going to play Call of Duty to blow up some steam. Go Giants, beat the Eagles. Merry Christmas and see you all before the New Year's game. Thanks a lot, Brian. Best of luck to you in the Call of Duty situation. F-Kit Crutch says, offensive problems. Defense gave them chances and they blew it. Man, the refs, that's all I'm going to say there. Family show. Tyler Smith needs to go liable. I think he meant be liable. Yeah, I mean, Tyler Smith, I'll spoil it right now. He's on the stock down portion of my stock report. Not a great game for him, obviously. Sam, thank you for the super chat. Says, a friend claims Dak gets confused by his own defense. I don't think that that's a fair claim, but obviously the current moment lives up to that idea. Anthony, thank you for the super chat. Says, really wanted to be positive this year, but this team is the same old Cowboys, uber talented team with dumb mistakes. Pain. I do not think that they are the same old Cowboys. I'm not saying that I think that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think that they're disappointing in a different way. Last year, they were not disappointing and can't win road games, right? Like they find new ways. They find new particular weaknesses. Every year they have a new Achilles heel. And theirs this year just happens to be an inability to win on the road, which is concerning because that's how they're, if they want to, going to get to the Super Bowl. Michael, thank you for the super chats. As pull starters and make Udoga play every snap for the remainder of the regular season. Run him into the ground until he figures out how to block. Chuma Udoga also on the stock down portion of my stock report. Okay. Caught up on Super Chat. F Kid Crutch says Tyron, not Tyler, but yeah, that too. Otherwise, thank you very much. Watsamata in the comment section says, "Wow, all the chatter saying Dallas is trash. Hey, believe what you want, but there's lots of quality here." I agree with this again. And Watsamata, you certainly know that. Moments like this, losses or big wins, kind of swing things, right? You're either on top of the world or you're trash. The reality is the Cowboys right now are probably somewhere around the 5th to 8th best team in the NFL. You can qualify that, however you'd like, whether you think they're 5, 6, 7, or 8. But relative to the entire playoff field, I think right now it's more than fair to put San Francisco ahead of literally everybody. If you wanted to put Philadelphia or Detroit ahead of Dallas, I would argue that to a certain degree. But obviously, the current moment makes that difficult. You have to put Baltimore ahead of them. How could you not put Buffalo ahead of them, even though Buffalo's not technically, clinched a playoff spot as of yet? You certainly could put Kansas City ahead of them, although they've obviously had their struggles as of late. They're not trash, but, they have flaws that are seemingly going to be issues in the playoffs, right? It's not like they have flaws that are these one-off kind of, random things. They had this, crazy thing happen to them or whatever. No, like they cannot win on the road. And I did not believe that to a degree. In fact, I spent all of last week, every conversation I had, every podcast or radio show I did, I talked about how, man, you look at it and this still has some life about how their losses on the road, so to speak, this season. They've lost 5 games, and if we're willing to throw away the Cardinals game because that was they were horrible, they lost to the Niners, the Eagles, the Bills, and the Dolphins on the road. Those are 4 of the best teams in the NFL. And so, yeah, like on one hand, is it fair to say, well, duh, you lost to 4 of the best teams in the NFL? They're some of the best teams in the NFL. Yes, that's fair. That's logical. That makes sense. But on the other hand, who are you going to play if you get to the playoffs and want to reach the Super Bowl? It's going to be the best teams in the NFL. So you have to find a way to conquer this. And so again, I think that we exaggerate certain statements like, oh, all you do is beat the crummy teams, all you do is beat the trash teams. And I know you're not doing that, Watsamata, but when you don't live up to the challenge, you breathe life into those narratives. They had every opportunity to squash these, not just today against the Dolphins, but last week against the Bills, and they were not able to do so. Scott has brought this up. I know that everybody's talking about this on social media. About the lack of holding calls against Micah Parsons. I don't have an educated take on this. I don't. Is it weird? Is it crazy? Is it wild that Micah hasn't drawn a holding penalty? Absolutely. Again, I don't have any intellect. It's weird. It's strange. And I know that there's a lot of people who want to believe that the NFL hates the Cowboys and the commissioner hates the Cowboys. I don't subscribe to anything like that. But what I will say is if you're one of the more dominant pass rushers in the NFL and you're not drawing a holding penalty, you've gone whatever it is, 37 or 38 quarters at this point in time, that does feel weird. That does just kind of like on an eye test, like initial test level feel kind of strange that one of the better, if not the best pass rusher in the NFL is not drawing a holding penalty. Then that feels very, very, very weird. But again, it's kind of tough to blame the Panthers. I saw a comment with Parsons' name. It made me think of the word Panthers, but I don't have. I wish I had something astute to offer on this. Let's see here. Let's get back to our super chats. John, thank you very much. Says more targets for Van Ginkel than CD in quarters 2 and 3. Man, look, I think Vic Fangio deserves a lot of credit. He's obviously an amazing defensive mind in the NFL. But for real, dude, like, how do you forget that CD Lamb exists? Like, at a certain point, and I tweeted this during the game, he's the game plan. This is just the CD show. He's got to see the game ended, obviously, literally. We're here in the postgame show, but at game's end now, looking at the box score here, CD Lamb finished with the 2 rushing attempts. Cool. And I like that. Find ways to manufacture him touches, but 10 targets and only 6 receptions. I'm sorry. It's got to be so much more. Jake Ferguson had 8 targets, which is great to see, but Tyreek Hill had 14 targets. Tyreek Hill, not even 100%. Like you have to be obsessed with getting CD Lamb involved, because guess what happens when he is involved? Good/great things happen. So definitely disappointing. Thank you, David, for the super chats. It's Eagles away, and today we were where we were blew it. The Eagles won't lose against the Giants. Season is essentially over. I don't think the Eagles season or the Cowboys season is essentially over by any stretch, because they're a playoff team. They can get totally hot. Think about it. There's still 2 weeks left in the regular season. The playoffs don't start till 3 weeks from now. 3 weeks ago, we thought the Cowboys were the best team in the NFL. Life and a lot can change in a matter of 3 weeks. So I'm not willing to go that far completely. Bryce, thank you for the super chat. Says officiating has to be discussed this offseason. For instance, I guess you're allowed to hold tackle defenders and damn pants receivers in order to prevent them from making a play. It was a very, very, very strangely officiated game. And I get that point. I think it's a fair point. I think it's fair to be upset about that. But, and I don't see any of you saying this in the chat, but if anyone is acting like that was the difference, that was why the Cowboys lost, I do think that that is going a little bit too far. SJ Johnson, thank you for the super chats. Is not super down on this loss. If 40, talking about Hunter Lipke, doesn't fumble at the 1 yard line, we have 27 points and are in a better position to win the game. Holding this very explosive offense to 22 points is a win in my book. Ford did his best. I agree with most of this, SJ. I don't think that Dak didn't not do his best, or I think that Dak certainly played as well as he could, but I think that Dak, was part of the problem. I really do. I mean, I more than praise Dak Prescott when I feel like it's warranted, and I feel like Dak Prescott partly let the Cowboys down. And that's okay, right? Like, he can't be superhuman every single week. He had an amazing drive, obviously, at the very end in a gotta have it situation. But for the most part, the Cowboys offense was lethargic and was absent. And particularly because I agree with you, the Cowboys defense did their job. To not be able to take advantage of that was just a really frustrating thing to kind of watch over and over and over again. Alexander with the comment on Facebook says, getting cute on the goal line. First drive cost us the game. The Parsons call was 4 points. The Clark missed hold call cost us a chance at a game-winning drive. I agree that the obviously first possession was costly for the Cowboys, and getting cute obviously was definitely a thing. They also got cute on the possession where they took the lead. The first and goal play, obviously, after the penalty that Tyreek Hill, that Kevontae Turpin and Michael Gallup both ultimately drew. Cowboys have first and goal at the half-yard line, and what do? They try to get, cute. And by the way, it's a Christmas show. We're all going to be cool. We're all going to be civil. Not afraid to put people in timeout around here. So if you're not cool and civil, let's just keep all that in mind. But anyway, getting too cute is definitely a thing. I think, again, some of these things I don't know are things like with a capital T to where we have to be overly concerned, but it's definitely a thing. It's definitely a real intangible thing at this point in time. Sam with the super chat says, how much of a factor is the rain with Dak? I mean, it's got to be a factor. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but a good friend of the show, Bobby Belt of 105.3 The Fan, tweeted this out actually before the Bills game. It's a thing. Like, it's, again, not a capital T thing, but it is definitely a thing with Dak Prescott in this case. And, is it going to rain in Tampa or in San Francisco or Philadelphia? Definitely not Detroit. In Las Vegas, definitely not, if the Cowboys somehow got there. You have to be ready for it. And at a certain point, we cannot, continue to explain these things away. I mean, sometimes it's just they were not good enough. And that's a weird thing. Watson Mata, by the way, with the same kind of logic on the Micah penalty thing, says the top 3 most elite pass rusher can't get a call in 10 weeks. The offensive line players know it. It actually makes a big, big difference. Daryl Baker says we're just frauds. There might be a teeny bit of fraudulence. I don't think that they're frauds. I think we can all relax. I know we're upset. I know we're frustrated. The Cowboys have lost 2 games in a row. We've gone a very, 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 very long time where that has been the case, and that's important to remember. But yeah. Now Bree Guy 75 says, RJ, this defense is not elite. I'm not gonna put up with any defensive slander, tonight, this game. The Cowboys defense held maybe the most explosive offense in the NFL outside of San Francisco to 22 points and 15 of those were field goals. And some of them were like from way beyond the arc. I mean, the Cowboys defense stood tall. And again, you had to say benefited, but in a literal sense, benefited from some injury situations. And obviously that's all a part of the game and whatnot, but they did their job. I have no real ill will to put on the Cowboys defense this particular game. Were there moments where they simply got outbeat because of the speed of the Dolphins pass catchers and skill position players? Absolutely. But if our expectation is to go down to Miami and shut these dudes out, I don't think you're being fair. I don't think you're being rational. And so the Cowboys defense more than lived up to their end of the bargain. This was an offensive loss in every way, shape, or form. While last week we sat here, basically a week ago at this exact time, and we sat here and we kind of just said everybody stunk, for the Cowboys. Everybody was awful against the Bills, and that was true. I think the defense was very good. I don't think they were elite, but contextually, relatively speaking, the defense was very good. Now, I agree with Ray, says RJ, Tua was never in real pressure. They did what they had to do to win. Yeah, I mean, was this their best performance? And maybe this is what you're saying, Ray. But was this their best performance? No, by no stretch. But the game plan had to be different. This was a different monster that they had to tame, and they survived. They lived to tell the tale. The Cowboys offense definitely did not. So that was just a tough situation. F Kit Crutch says no, but we expect the offense to show up throughout the game and not just at the end. Very, very, very much agreed. And Watsamata says defense was regularly gashed and gave up the game, losing 4-minute and 30-second drive. However, Miami's a super elite offense, held them to 22 at home. Again, that's what I'm saying. Like, are we handing out like a game ball to the defense? No. But relative to context, they did their job, and I'm willing to say that. Bubba J, thank you for the super chats. Historically, to go far in the playoffs, you must stop the run and be able to run the ball. We didn't do either well. I did feel like last week in Buffalo, and I actually had the run game as a volatile stock. I felt like the Cowboys were able to kind of get things done just a bit on the ground. Does anybody know how, I mean, maybe you've already looked at the box score, but does anybody know quickly how many total rushing yards the Cowboys had? Total. I'm talking about TOTAL. How many total rushing yards? If you don't know, just guess. I would love to see guesses in the comments. If you do know, please don't ruin it. But if you don't know, give us a guess. How many rushing yards? I'm trying to buy you all time. Do you think the Cowboys as an entire team had on the road against the Miami Dolphins? Andy Reeves says 45. Christopher Summers says 50. J.R. Wood says less than 80. Brandon Major says 68. John D says 73. Kevin had the number exactly. I think Kevin might have seen it and peeked in the box score. 97 total yards for the Cowboys on the ground. And look, the Dolphins defense is obviously, I think better than conventional wisdom would suggest. But you got to be able to do more than that. This is the time of year, and the Cowboys kind of talked about that, right? This is when it gets serious. You have to be able to run the ball. Dallas Cowboy 2011 says, I'm separating myself from the rest of my delusional fan base. I don't know if you're talking about the fan base's opinions. Oh my goodness, the Denver Broncos are off to a great start in this night game. But you're saying we suck, Dak sucks, Mike sucks, Dan Quinn sucks. I don't know if you're saying that or if you're being facetious. But there is, look, every time the Cowboys lose, the sky is falling. That's just kind of the gig, man. You got to kind of accept it and ride the waves as they show up. But Al Plack says we need to create turnovers on the road in the playoffs and keep penalties to an absolute minimum to have some success. I agree with that. I think that that's a great point. Like, you can talk about kind of the cliches of football, if you will, and turnovers. How many did the Cowboys obviously, generate? None. They had no turnovers. They did have a fumble themselves, obviously, at the very beginning with the Hunter situation, but not one, not a single one. Bob Stern's been doing a great job, obviously, on his Substack, kind of chronicling this. This is the recipe for losing, I think maybe is the more specific way to do it. Don't generate any turnovers. Don't run the ball well. Have a bunch of penalties. I mean, all told, the Cowboys in this particular game, let me pull it up here so I get the number exact, had 6 penalties for 38 yards, but they were killer penalties at the exact moments that they were kind of inopportune. They kept drives alive. Not quite as bad, obviously, as they were against the Buffalo Bills last week. Now, Jared Turner says we beat ourselves. We love to do it. I don't quite agree with this. I think the Cowboys were just not prepared. And this is kind of my last take before I get to my stock report here, because I want to get you guys out of here early. It's Christmas Eve. I know you got family and things going on. I tweeted this at halftime. It felt like this team was playing so scared. I mean, it felt like this offense was so afraid to generate a turnover. This defense was so afraid to give up the big play. And you just can't win that way. If you want to get conservative when you got a 20-point lead, by all means, but you cannot play scared in the NFL, let alone against very good teams. Whether or not you think the Dolphins are elite is up to you, but you cannot play scared on the road. You cannot play scared in situations where you have to have it. And that's a tough scene. That's what bothered me the most, honestly. And that's what was so inspiring about how the Cowboys kind of put together the drive at the very end to take the lead that they relinquished very quickly. Was, they really, looked like they wanted it. And it was the first time in almost, 2 full games that it felt like the Cowboys wanted it more than the team they were playing against. And that's just a tough scene. SJ Johnson with the super chat says, how does Chuma allow free rushers twice? LOL. LT is a major need since Tyron is on his last legs, draft or free agency for sure. Yeah. Bad game for Chuma Doga. Let's go. I know it's going to sound weird, but I have more stock ups than I do stock downs. It just kind of felt that way, but the stock downs were just so kind of heavy that the net stock down effect was, pretty significant. But anyway, let's start with the stock downs because everybody wants to be negative. Mike McCarthy, I feel like we've kind of covered why. But I love Mike McCarthy. I have sat here and I have sang a lot of praises about Mike McCarthy. And in losses, in bad moments, the good things can still be true, right? It doesn't just have to be it's all the good things or all the bad things. All of the things can be true at once. So it can be true that Mike McCarthy has really delivered the Cowboys to a legitimate place. I mean, consider again, if you're looking for the sunshine in this moment here, that the Cowboys have lost 2 games in a row here. We're pissed off. We're really mad. But guess what? While they lost both of those games, they already had a ticket to the playoffs. And I know, oh man, we're just going to show up and get bounced for the first, third year in a row. Well, again, that's a luxury. Are you telling me the Jets wouldn't give everything to show up to the playoffs and get bounced every year in a row? And I'm not sitting here and saying, just be grateful. Shut up. You don't have any reason to be mad at the Cowboys because you have a whole hell of a lot of reasons. But that needs to be said as well. But I mean, goodness gracious, you have to be more prepared than this. You have to be more aggressive as an offensive play caller. It felt like Mike got way stale, way conservative, especially as an offensive play caller. And the penalties continue to be an issue. And these aren't just penalties; they're pre-snap penalties. The motion thing with CD and Jake Ferguson, the false starts. You cannot do this. And look, I know that the Dolphins, seem to have more fans in their building playing the Cowboys than most teams. But let's not act like Hard Rock Stadium is like the NFL mecca for home field advantage. I mean, it wasn't like the Cowboys had false starts against the Bills. That's a really high-powered stadium relative to the fan base. You get what I'm saying? So this just was not reflective of a greatly coached team, and they are a greatly coached team, which is really frustrating. Namir, thank you for the super chat. Says we killed the defense last week. Today they improved and adjusted. Saw Micah off the ball a few times. That's true. Just saw some Mike McCarthy stuff that kills me. Penalties and being too cute. Fans will cry, but Dallas is still solid. That's really well said and kind of really well encapsulated. Ray Mendez says, enjoy seeing others feel my pain. Merry Christmas. Next up for me on Stock Down, Dak Prescott. You got to do more, and it's unfair, right? It's unfair, but that's the gig. I mean, you got to do more. And if we're gonna sit here and we're gonna bag on the offense, we're gonna say they weren't enough. I mean, it felt like Dak was so nervous. I mean, and again, it's not an easy thing to go up against a Vic Fangio coordinated defense and all the blitzing and things that happen, but you have to find a way. And so stock down Dak Prescott. He was on such fire, obviously, for such a long time. And last week was disappointing. This week was disappointing. And my faith in Dak overall isn't wavering, but not his finest hour. Certainly, if you're curious from a statistical standpoint, again, it is fantasy playoff season. Dak finished 20 of 32, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was under a lot of duress, but couldn't quite get it done. And that feels like a really lame sports radio thing to say, but that's just kind of where we're at. That's the point we're at here. Chuma Edoga, we really have to say much? I mean, do we really have to? Do you really need me to offer anything that hasn't been said here? I mean, it was bad. It was really, really, really bad. I don't know. I mean, I mean, it was bad. I mean, he's on the stock down list because it was bad. So that's kind of where I'm at here. Tyler Smith, obviously we're way more forgiving of Tyler Smith, who's also on the stock down list for the podcast audience that can't see the graphics. Missing Tyron hurts. And I know that a lot of people want to, get onto Tyron and say like, oh man, his presence causes more problems and whatnot. And I've been somebody who said that, but it's just the reality. And look, this is a little bit of coping, but if the Cowboys have to miss Tyron Smith for a teeny little bit, in December to have him right for the playoffs, then I'm willing to pay that price. A lot of you are, disagreeing with me on the Dak Prescott thing. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that a lot of you are supportive of Dak Prescott. So that makes me happy. I'm fine being wrong in y'all's minds. Stock down Tyler Smith. Those are the only stock downs I have. I don't know if anybody had any other stock. I mean, y'all don't even agree for the most part with Dak Prescott as being a stock down. I mean, there was no real like specific player in my mind that really kind of failed. And that's why I think the failure is really massive around McCarthy. And, again, in my personal opinion, Dak Prescott, wasn't, good enough in certain moments. Granted, he was under duress. And again, we talked about Chuma Edoga. We talked about, obviously, Tyler Smith. But I think it's difficult. Let me see here. Trying to put somebody in timeout. Michael says Dak is the 11th best quarterback in the world. So that's not that bad. I don't think he's bad overall. I just would have liked to have seen more. So I don't have a lot of other players that I'm down on because I feel like the defense played well. I think the offense kind of came down to a handful of people, and that's, where it's at. If we're curious, stock up CeeDee Lamb. I mean, because He's amazing. Let's kind of rip through these here. Stock up DeMarcus Lawrence. And I think DeMarcus Lawrence deserves more than a stock up in my mind. The Cowboys defense got worked last week. I mean, absolutely worked. They got worked on the ground. James Cook had some historic numbers. And DeMarcus Lawrence, I thought this was stupid, but a lot of people got on him for a comment he had made a week or the week before after beating the Eagles about how you got to be ready, you got to be physical. ESPN aired it and it had an expletive and all this stuff. If anybody took the loss from last week and, said that's never happening, as far as how I'm involved ever again, it was DeMarcus Lawrence. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence really, really, I think, lived up to what he had to do. He was amazing in this game. I can't wait to see PFF grades. He was awesome. So well done, DeMarcus Lawrence. Very, very, very pleased to see it. I don't know why anybody ever hates on DeMarcus Lawrence. It's so silly. John D says, where's the Brian Anger love? Rarely a bad punt all year. That's true. If you want to give Brian Anger a stock up, I'm totally cool with that. Michael Grove says, Connell says we need a running back. Michael Grove says, saw a little spark in Tolbert. You and I park our cars in the same garage. Because stock up for me, Jalen Tolbert. Now, the bar is a little bit lower for Tolbert to kind of, reach a stock up than it is for a lot of other players, but the catch he had, the big catch, was amazing. And that's what was kind of frustrating about the offense, was the offense for the most part, outside of the one drive at the very end, it was the big CeeDee Lamb touchdown and the big Jalen Tolbert play. That was kind of the offense before the drive at the very end. So shout out to Jalen Tolbert. Shout out, of course, to Brandon Cooks, who had the touchdown, the go-ahead touchdown that, the lead the Cowboys were not able to hold on to. I have two more stock ups. Stephon Gilmore, because, man, Stephon is really showed up. I mean, really showed up for the Cowboys. And, I was really nervous, like I think a lot of people were, when it looked like he was injured. But I think Stephon Gilmore has played really, really, really sound football for the Cowboys as of late. This was a very, very tall order for him to go up against. And obviously DeRon Bland as well. And every time DeRon Bland doesn't have a pick six, we just forget that he ever exists. But stock up to Stephon Gilmore. Amazing performance, relatively speaking, in my mind. Final stock up in my mind, Brandon Aubrey, because he's amazing. And Brandon Aubrey's made 33 consecutive field goals to start his career. Like, what? That's impossible. Ray Mendes, thank you for the super chat, says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Ray. Kevin says, stock up Amari Cooper, 265 yards today. It was a very sad day to remember that the Cowboys traded away Amari Cooper for basically nothing. He was incredible for the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, and I am very sad about that. Steve says, stocks are supposed to be week to week. How can you say Dak didn't do better than last week? Well, because the expectation was kind of magnified, right? The expectation was you don't lose 2 games in a row as a team. Your offense had a bad day in Buffalo. We were all willing to excuse it. We were all willing to say, hey, you ran into this. It was the weather. Hey, it was the Bills. They were desperate. We explained away a lot of things. And did they improve? I mean, fine. If they were, if the status quo remained the same from a week ago to today, that's fine. I guess in a literal sense, maybe the stock doesn't go down, but you're the quarterback. I mean, you're the straw that stirs the drink. You're supposed to be the catalytic effect. And he was for some of this game. I completely agree with all of you who say, that he kept drives alive and moments alive and obviously was under duress all night long. But again, I mean, it can't just be on Mike McCarthy. It can't. And I am putting a whole hell of a lot of credit, or blame on Mike McCarthy for this game. Some of it was on Dak. He was a little too trigger happy in the first half, and things did settle, obviously, but it was not his best game. And there are reasons for that, fairly objective reasons that are not his fault, but he has to do more. That's the reality of the position. We sit here and we make fun of Jalen Hurts or whoever the case may be because he's not doing enough. That's the gig. I stand by it. I'm cool with us disagreeing here. That happens sometimes in the stock report, guys. We can all still love each other. But it was a weird game in that, again, I have a hard time coming up with any other individual stock downs because for the most part, the Cowboys defense played well. Yes, they gave up a couple of occasional plays, but they're super talented players on the Dolphins. And so I don't necessarily hold that against them. Ray says, stock up for us Cowboys fan who continue to support the Cowboys despite how painful it can be. Kevin, who just got here, says, got to blame the offense tonight. Defense held their end of the bargain. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'll acknowledge that it's not completely rational to have Dak as a stock down, but that's just kind of where we're at. Like, we're at here where there's two games left to the playoffs. Like, it has to be enough or it isn't. And so that's, Kevin, by the way, is saying, how is Pollard not a stock down? If you want to have Tony Pollard be a stock down, I'm more than fine with that. Tony Pollard in this game, 12 carries, 38 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. For what it's worth, Rico Dowdle, only 2 carries, 4 yards. The run game as a whole, again, missing Tyron was And again, I hate to kind of throw that out as this blanket, like we use that to explain everything away. It can't just be Mike McCarthy and Chuma Edoga's fault, but Tony Pollard is a stock down is a very fair call. I'll add him in the article version of this, and we'll have 11 as opposed to 10 because it was a bad day for Tony Pollard. And I really thought that we had turned a corner with him, last week, and I don't think he's as bad as the internet makes it seem, but he's obviously not playing at a high level. Casey says, take away the Lepke fumble and even just one of the crucial non-existent left tackle plays that ruined a third down for us. The Cowboys would have put up 27-30. That may be true. I mean, I can certainly see that argument and how it holds water, but the reality is they didn't, and we're all sad because of it. Now, here's the thing. I know it's frustrating. I know it's annoying. I know everything is a bummer, but this really, and I saw Shireen Williams, Pro Football Talk, tweet this out before we started the show. This really did not damage the Cowboys' chances to win the NFC East. And I know a lot of you are saying, and by the way, I've got the game on behind y'all. How did the Broncos not score after that first play? I thought for sure they were going to score. I just realized that they didn't, but whatever. Anyway, I know a lot of people want to say, don't bring up the NFC East to me, blah, 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 blah. There's no way this team sucks. This team stinks. Everybody's bad. Everybody's trash. But this did not really damage their cause. Now, it did eliminate room for error. The Cowboys have to win against Detroit. They have to win against Washington, and they have to get a Philly loss. If those three things happen, they win the division. All right, that's it. And so is it fair to assume they're just going to fix things? No. Is it fair to question them? Absolutely. Is it fair to be frustrated? Totally. We're in a weird spot right now. It's a little bit of a rut, but it's a week-to-week league, and we're going to have to make it. We're going to have to hold each other. We're going to have to make it through this, and I know that we can. All right. Cowboys lost on Christmas Eve. They really did this to us. If you don't even want to watch football tonight, can't say I blame you. You want to watch a movie or something like that? By all means. You want to play a board game? Go ahead. You want to do the white elephant? You want to open gifts? I don't mind it. I hope you all are winning in your fantasy playoff games, but more than anything, I hope that you all are having a very Merry Christmas. We'll have a video up on Monday night, actually, recapping kind of the action across the NFC playoff picture and where the Cowboys are entering week 17. So please be on the lookout for that. But I say this all the time, and I'm going to continue to say this because we are so incredibly fortunate and blessed here at Blogging the Boys that all of you choose to support us, that all of you choose to follow us, that all of you choose to listen to us, that all of you choose to interact with us. And Christmas is a time of year where that feels more prominent than usual, and some of that is because it lines up with playoffs and things like that. But I really, I know I speak for our entire staff at Blogging the Boys in saying thank you all so much. We could not literally do what we do without your support, without your participation, without your attention, without your love and detail to everything that we do. And so thank you so much for being a part of our lives. It really does mean everything. And I hope you, however you're celebrating this holiday, this Christmas season, whether it's with family or friends or whatever, I hope you have just the most incredible holiday. I hope it's exactly what you want because that's exactly what you deserve. And I hope that you make some wonderful memories. Granted, they will not be Dallas Cowboys related. But I hope you get whatever Dallas Cowboys thing you wanted, whether it's a jersey or a hat or a t-shirt, maybe a victory polo that you cannot wear on Christmas Day. Goodness gracious. But I hope that it is, I hope it's very special for you. Jay Miller, thank you for the super chat. Says Merry Christmas, RJ. Thank you for all that you do. So yeah, we will make it through this. We will survive. We will rebuild. We have the technology. The Cowboys are very much alive for the NFC East. So be mad, feel the emotions if you want, but just remember that, or keep that perspective, keep that context, because that matters very much as far as all this is concerned. And I don't mean to do that like they were never going to win every single game. There's no coping here. It was a frustrating and inexcusable loss, and there are things to be legitimately concerned by, but there are also things, as was noted in the chat throughout the entire discussion, to remain positive in, to believe in continually. So we do not have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Consider that, a defense that think about this for a second, all right? A week ago, we were all here and we were like, this defense sucks. This defense stinks. This defense stinks out loud. This defense is horrible. This defense is like, the new Ferrari movie. Seriously, who enjoyed that movie? It was awful, but whatever. This defense is so terrible. And 1 week later, just one snap of the NFL schedule later, the Dallas Cowboys defense held one of the more explosive offenses in the NFL to just a single touchdown. It can change that quickly. And on Saturday night, the Dallas Cowboys could put up 50 points against the Detroit Lions because Jimmy Johnson deserves that when he goes into the Ring of Honor. And then we'll sit here and we'll bemoan and we'll say, well, it can do that at home, but they can't do that on the road. And we'll have something to be mad about, something to be upset about. But things can change on a week-to-week basis all the time in the NFL. So if you are looking for a point of cope, rather a point of hope, because the one and only Kate McAllister said that this is the season of perpetual hope. It is that. The Dallas Cowboys are a very good team. The Dallas Cowboys are one of the best teams in the NFL. That really did not feel like the case on Sunday, but it did not refrain it from being true in an overall sense. Remember those things. I love you all. Merry Christmas to you all. Go Cowboys for now and forever and ever. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next time.